180 seconds. Imagine you're the operator of a Patriot system in Al Udeid, Qatar. An alarm goes off. On the display in front of you, a ballistic missile appears on the radar, launched from Iran, 250 kilometers away. You have 180 seconds to intercept it. The problem is that the standard Patriot engagement protocol takes longer than that to execute. But that number alone doesn't tell the whole story. What makes 180 seconds so devastating isn't the speed of the missile. It's what happens, or rather, what doesn't happen, during those 180 seconds inside American defense systems. To understand, you need to know how a Patriot or THAAD system works in the real world. Not on paper, in practice. When a ballistic missile is launched, the radar system must first detect it. Then, the software has to classify the threat, calculate its trajectory, and determine if it's a valid threat. Then, a human operator, or in some operating modes, the automated system, must authorize the engagement. The interceptor must be positioned. Its own radar needs to lock onto the target, and the interceptor missile must be launched with enough time to reach the collision point before the target hits the ground. Each of these steps has a minimum duration, and these combined durations, in the standard Patriot engagement configuration, exceed 180 seconds in threat corridors of less than 500 kilometers. This isn't a theory. It's not political analysis. It's physical arithmetic. Analysts at the Center for Strategic and International Studies documented this limitation even before the 2026 conflict. What happened in February confirmed what they had already calculated. Patriot systems were designed for a different threat: medium and long-range ballistic missiles, launched from greater distances with longer flight windows. When the threat is 150 or 250 kilometers away and is arriving in 180 seconds, the standard engagement protocol simply doesn't fit within the available time window. And Iran, in 2026, isn't sending one missile. They're sending dozens. This isn't history. It happened between February 28th and March 6th, 2026, just weeks ago. The data is still being evaluated, and what it shows permanently changes the defense calculus in the Gulf. It's not about American technology being inferior. It's not about an intelligence failure or poor strategic planning. It's about a physical equation that became unfavorable, tested in actual combat. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to show you the specific missile that made this possible, why defense systems failed in arithmetic and not in technology, what really happened during Operation Epic Fury, and why the 180-second problem isn't a gap that can be closed with more interceptors. It's a structural condition. The structural condition begins with a single missile, the Khorramshahr-4. Iran also calls it the K-bar. It was officially deployed in February 2026. Just days before the start of the campaign, we're going to analyze in detail. On paper, it looks like another medium-range ballistic missile, a 2,000-kilometer range, a 1,500-kilogram warhead. These numbers are impressive, but they aren't what makes the Khorramshahr-4 different from its predecessors. What changes everything is the fuel. The Khorramshahr-4 uses hypergolic fuel. In case you aren't familiar with the term, it's a propellant that ignites spontaneously when its two components come into contact. It doesn't need external ignition. It can be stored at room temperature for long periods. And, this is the critical detail, it doesn't require fueling procedures on the pad before launch. Older ballistic missiles, based on non-storable liquid fuel, need to be fueled prior to launch. This adds between 20 and 60 minutes to the preparation time. Those 20 to 60 minutes are windows during which satellite intelligence, surveillance drones, or detection radar can spot the preparation process and trigger an early warning for defense systems. The Khorramshahr-4 eliminates this window. Estimated preparation time, approximately 12 minutes. 12 minutes from the moment the launch order is given to the moment the missile is in the air. To contextualize what this means operationally, American early warning systems, including the SBARS satellite system, detect ballistic missile launches by the heat of the engines at the moment of launch. When a missile is detected, defense systems receive an alert. This alert needs to be processed, verified, and relayed to the defense batteries, and the batteries have to initiate the engagement protocol. This process, from detection to active engagement, takes time. Under ideal conditions, with systems fully on high alert and crews ready at their stations, the minimum window is still several minutes. Under real operational conditions, with systems monitoring multiple simultaneous targets, multiple threat vectors, and crews on regular operating shifts, this window is even larger. With the Khorramshahr-4 being launched 250 kilometers away, the missile reaches its target in approximately 2 to 3 minutes. From launch to impact, you have a window in which engagement is physically impossible. Not due to a lack of equipment, but due to a lack of time. As if that wasn't enough, the Khorramshahr-4 brings another complicating factor: terminal phase maneuverability. Trajectory analyses suggest the ability to adjust course during descent, which complicates the calculation of the interception point for Patriot systems. The interceptor isn't just trying to hit a moving object. It's trying to hit an object that can alter its trajectory. By February 2026, Iran had this missile ready for use, officially deployed, with a stockpile that, as we will see, was carefully rebuilt following the losses of the 2025 conflict. The question that emerges after understanding the Khorramshahr-4 is straightforward. If defense systems need more time than the missile takes to arrive, what exactly can the Patriot and THAAD do when dozens of these missiles arrive at the same time? The answer lies in arithmetic, not in technology. A Patriot PAC-3 battery, the system's most advanced version, can engage a limited number of simultaneous targets. This is a technical fact, not a criticism. Patriot and THAAD are extraordinary systems designed for a different threat. The problem isn't the quality, it's the arithmetic. Now, 44 ballistic missiles arriving simultaneously. Do the math yourself. Even with multiple coordinated Patriot and THAAD batteries defending Al Udeid, the combined interception capacity against a saturation of 44 simultaneous targets leaves a critical margin without coverage. And that's assuming all batteries are operational, on full alert, with intact communications and perfect real-time coordination. But Operation Epic Fury didn't just launch 44 ballistic missiles against Al Udeid. It launched simultaneous attacks against Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, and Kuwait. Every defense system at every base was being overwhelmed at the same time. No battery could transfer resources to help another. Each was processing its own saturation. The technical term for this is multi-instance saturation. The idea is mathematically simple. You don't need a better missile than the adversary's interceptor. You just need more missiles than the adversary has available interceptors and processing capacity to engage. Pay attention to this specific detail, because this is where everything changes. Confirmed reports indicate that air defense radars in Bahrain, home to the American Fifth Fleet, the U.S. Naval Command Center in the Gulf, were destroyed in the attacks. Not overwhelmed. Destroyed. This is deliberate. It's not collateral damage. It's a first-phase tactic. When you destroy a defense system's radar, you don't just eliminate that battery. You create a blind spot for all the other defense systems that rely on multi-sensor data triangulation to track targets accurately. An integrated defense network missing one of its radar nodes operates with reduced visibility. Less input data means less precisely calculated trajectories, which means less accurate interception points. And then there's the FATA problem. The Fata 1 and Fata 2 are hypersonic glide vehicles. Terminal speed of Mach 13. Range of 1,400 to 1,500 kilometers. The practical bottleneck of this technology is devastating. There is currently no certified and operational interception system that has demonstrated the capability to engage targets at Mach 13 speeds in the Gulf theater of operations. Patriot PAC-3 has an interception envelope up to approximately Mach 5. THAAD has a slightly larger envelope, but still substantially below Mach 13. The Fata, if launched alongside a saturation of conventional ballistic missiles, isn't just hard to intercept. In practical terms, there is no interceptor available in the theater for that speed layer. This creates what military analysts call the upper tier problem. You can reinforce defenses against conventional threats. You can add Patriot batteries. But as long as the hypersonic layer goes unanswered, coordinated saturation will always have a vector with no available countermeasure in the theater. What I've just described is the theoretical framework. Now let's see what happens when this framework meets reality. February 28, 2026. February 28, 2026. The beginning of Operation Epic Fury. Between February 28 and March 6, 2026, Iran conducted a ballistic strike campaign against 4 American and allied base systems in the Gulf: Al Udeid in Qatar, the Fifth Fleet in Bahrain, multiple targets in the United Arab Emirates, and facilities in Kuwait. I'm going to give you the real, confirmed numbers. Al Udeid, Qatar, the largest American base in the Middle East. Approximately 10,000 American soldiers. Command Center for Air Operations across CENTCOM, the United States Central Command, covering the Middle East, Central Asia, and parts of South Asia. Staging ground for American operations across more than 2 decades of conflicts in the region. The attack against Al Udeid involved 44 ballistic missiles and 8 drones. At least one Khorramshahr 4 penetrated Qatar's defenses and hit facilities at Al Udeid. This is not a theoretical projection. It's not baseless Iranian propaganda. It's a fact validated by Qatari authorities and American military reports. Let me repeat this with the emphasis it deserves. For the first time in documented history, the largest American base in the Middle East suffered an undeniable ballistic impact in combat. An Iranian missile, the Khorramshahr 4, the very system I just described to you with a 2,000-kilometer range and a 1,500-kilogram warhead, breached Qatar's defense systems and physically struck the facilities at Al Udeid. Confirmation by named sources is what sets this event apart from the entire previous history of missile attacks in the region. Moving on to Bahrain, headquarters of the U.S. Fifth Fleet, the American Naval Coordination Center in the Persian Gulf. If Al Udeid is where American air power in the Middle East is commanded, Bahrain is where naval power is coordinated, covering the Gulf, the Arabian Sea, and the energy routes passing through the Strait of Hormuz. Air defense radars in Bahrain were annihilated in the attacks, not just degraded or temporarily impaired. Total destruction was confirmed by satellite imagery analysis and military sources. When defense radars are destroyed, 2 problems emerge simultaneously. First, the base was left partially blind, without local radar coverage to accurately detect subsequent threats. Second, the destruction of Bahrain's radars degraded the integrated defense network of the entire theater, because radar data from that position fed other systems in the regional defense network. In the United Arab Emirates, the scale changes. Here is the number that defines what saturation truly means. The strike package against the Emirates involved 165 ballistic missiles, 2 cruise missiles, and 541 drones. 165 ballistic missiles, 541 drones at the same time. To put it in perspective, This is the largest multi-vector saturation package ever documented against a single U.S. Allied theater of operations. The deliberate combination of ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones creates the problem we discussed earlier on a maximum scale. Each vector requires different detection, tracking, and engagement systems, simultaneously overwhelming the processing capacity of the integrated defense network. Kuwait was also targeted during the campaign, representing the fourth U.S.-aligned base system to be hit within the same 6-day operational period. Now I'll give you the exact historical context. Before February 28, 2026, there was no confirmed record of a ballistic missile hitting an American base in combat. Short-range rocket attacks, yes. Drone attacks, yes. But a medium-range ballistic missile penetrating the defenses of one of the most heavily protected facilities in the world and producing a confirmed impact by named sources, that was unprecedented. Operation Epic Fury ended that record. But there's a question any rational person asks when they hear these numbers. With Iran having fired hundreds of missiles in 2025 and having suffered Israeli strikes on its production infrastructure, how does the country still have enough of an arsenal to mount a campaign of this scale? The answer lies in a piece of data that most analyses completely ignored. Not in the current arsenal, but in a shipment that arrived 12 months before the campaign began. In February 2025, a cargo ship arrived at the port of Bandar Abbas, Iran, carrying 1,000 tons of sodium perchlorate. Sodium perchlorate, a solid oxidizer, the primary raw material for producing solid propellants for ballistic missiles. The conversion is straightforward. 1,000 tons equals the capacity to produce approximately 260 K-bar Shakan-type missiles, or around 200 Soleimani-type missiles, medium-range systems comparable to the Khorramshahr 4 in category. That shipment didn't arrive during Operation Epic Fury. It arrived 12 months earlier, and the satellite imagery that documented it had been available for analysis since February 2025. The signal of reconstitution was readable a year before the campaign started. With this data, the math of the arsenal adds up. Before the 2025 conflict with Israel, intelligence estimates pointed to approximately 2,500 operational missiles. During the 2025 conflict, Iran fired approximately 550. Israeli strikes destroyed additional facilities and fielded stockpiles. Result? The arsenal dropped to estimates of 1,000 to 1,200 missiles by early 2026. That sounds like a significant decrease, and it is. But with raw materials stockpiled since February 2025, 12 months of production were enough to restore substantial capacity. The estimated production rate for mid-2026, approximately 100 missiles per month. With 100 missiles per month being produced and a stockpile of 1,000 to 1,200 already in place, Iran is replenishing the equivalent of a moderate saturation campaign every month. The conclusion is straightforward. Iran was preparing, deliberately and calculatingly, 12 months in advance. Having understood the math behind the arsenal, the focus shifts to the strategic impact. What do these bases actually represent? Because striking Al Udeid isn't just attacking a facility. It's attacking the entire architecture of American power projection in the Gulf. Al Udeid is the central hub for CENTCOM air operations. It's not just a base with parked aircraft. It's where the Combined Air Operations Center, the CAOC, operates. The CAOC is the coordination brain for all American and Allied military aviation across an area covering the Middle East, East Africa, Afghanistan, and parts of Central Asia. When an F-35 takes off from any Allied base in the region, when targets are authorized, when mission-critical communications are transmitted, Everything goes through the CAOC at Al Udeid. There is no immediate substitute in the CENTCOM theater. The same level of importance applies to Bahrain. The headquarters of the U.S. Fifth Fleet isn't just a port with anchored ships. It's the coordination center for the entire American naval posture in the Persian Gulf, the Arabian Sea, and the adjacent Indian Ocean. The Fifth Fleet coordinates the protection of commercial shipping routes, the response to any attempt to close the Strait of Hormuz, and naval support for ground operations in the region. The Strait of Hormuz is the choke point through which approximately 20% of globally traded oil passes every single day. When we look at Bahrain as a strategic target, we aren't just looking at a military base. We're looking at the command center capable of responding to any action that threatens the flow of energy keeping global economies running. The United Arab Emirates represents another vector. Advanced logistics, pre-positioning of heavy equipment, and one of the most critical rear echelon routes for American and allied operations in the region. The UAE also hosts intelligence and monitoring facilities that feed data into the Integrated Theater Defense System, the very same system whose radars in Bahrain were destroyed. Kuwait, the northernmost position, is the closest point to the Iraqi border and the airspace that would be critical in any scenario involving ground operations or air support in Iraq and neighboring countries. These four base systems are not independent facilities. They are nodes in an integrated power projection network. When Al Udeid is hit, the CAOS is degraded. When Bahrain's radars are destroyed, naval coverage is compromised. When the Emirates are saturated with 165 ballistic missiles and 541 drones, rear echelon logistics are left exposed. When Kuwait is reached, the northernmost position of the defensive arc becomes vulnerable. The part that most analyses won't say out loud. It's not just the physical damage that matters. It's the strategic signal. When an Iranian missile strikes Al Udeid, and this fact is publicly validated by the governments involved, the entire premise of invulnerability that underpinned deterrence based on the forward American presence in the Gulf fundamentally shifts, not because the base was destroyed, but because that implicit protection was challenged in practice in actual combat, with documented results. But there is an even more revealing factor. The Khorramshahr 4 alone does not explain the success of the operation. What explains it is the entire attack architecture. Let's build the full picture. In the Emirates, where three mutually incompatible threat categories arrived simultaneously, this became visible on a massive scale. A drone is not a ballistic missile. A cruise missile is not a drone. Each threat vector requires a different set of sensors to detect, a different tracking system to follow, and a different weapons system to engage effectively. A Patriot PAC-3 is optimized for high-trajectory ballistic missiles. It is not the most efficient system against low radar signature drones flying at low altitudes. A short-range point defense system is designed for drones and low-altitude targets. But it doesn't process the threat of a Khorramshahr 4 descending on a high-speed ballistic trajectory with the same efficiency. When you send 541 drones at the same time as 165 ballistic missiles, what you're doing is forcing the adversary to divide their defense resources between completely distinct interception profiles. Every weapon system allocated against drones is a piece of equipment unavailable to stop ballistics. Every radar operator processing low-altitude vectors is dedicating cognitive and computational capacity that cannot be used simultaneously to track threats in a terminal dive. Finally, the upper tier comes into play, for which there is absolutely no response in the theater of operations. Fatah 1 and Fatah 2, a terminal speed of Mach 13. The tier that, as we've already established, has no interceptor available in the theater, and which, when inserted into a saturation of ballistics and drones, eliminates any logic of a single-layered defense. The architecture of the trap, then, is as follows. The lower-tier drones forces the allocation of short-range defense resources. The middle-tier conventional ballistic missiles like the Ghadr and the Khaybar Shekan saturates the available Patriot and THAAD interceptors. The deliberate destruction of radars early in the campaign progressively degrades the visibility of subsequent threats. And at the top, the Fatahs create a tier for which no operational interceptor in the theater has a certified response. Military analysts describe this architecture as defense by forced depletion. You don't need a single missile that is superior to the adversary's interceptor. You need a mix of vectors that consumes the adversary's defense resources faster than they can be replenished and reallocated during active engagement. The attacks against Bahrain's radars add the temporal dimension. By destroying sensors early in the campaign, you progressively degrade defense capabilities as the attack unfolds. The systems that survive the first wave have to work with less data. Less data means less precise interceptions. Less precise interceptions mean that more missiles from the second and third waves reach their target. Faced with this perfectly orchestrated trap, we arrive at the most critical question of the entire video. Is there a military response to this? Or is the 180-second problem a permanent vulnerability in the current balance of power? We arrive at the question that really matters. What does being defenseless mean in practice? It doesn't mean defenseless. Al-Udeid had Patriot. Bahrain had integrated defense systems. The Emirates had THAAD batteries. Defenseless doesn't mean there were no operational systems. It means the available systems were structurally overwhelmed by the arithmetic of the current threat in terms of volume, speed, and variety of vectors. That is a critical distinction. And it's the distinction that defines what comes next. American options in the current scenario are more limited than they appear at first glance. Adding more Patriot batteries doesn't solve the saturation of 541 simultaneous drones and 165 ballistic missiles, because at some point, the processing capacity of the battle management system, not just the quantity of interceptors on the shelf, becomes the limiting factor. You can have more rockets available, but if the radar and combat management software can't process all incoming vectors simultaneously, the extra rockets won't solve the underlying problem. Repositioning bases beyond Iranian ballistic range means moving facilities beyond 2,000 kilometers, the range of the Khorramshahr 4. Geographically, this means shifting operations out of the Persian Gulf, which eliminates the rapid response capability that justifies the forward presence in those positions in the first place. The solution that protects the bases eliminates their strategic reason for existing, and the production issue changes the equation over time. With 100 missiles being produced per month and a stockpile of 1,000 to 1,200 already in position by March 2026, the capacity to carry out saturation campaigns won't diminish in the short term. The math favors the attacker as long as the missile production rate outpaces the manufacturing rate of interceptors and the replenishment of defense systems following intensive operations. What happened between February 28 and March 6, 2026, is the first confirmed dataset of how the 182nd problem plays out in actual combat. And the conflict continues. The equation that emerges from this is simple to state and hard to solve. 180 seconds is not a technical gap that can be closed with additional investment in existing systems. It's a physical condition of distance and speed that structurally favors the offensive force in the Gulf's threat corridors. As long as this condition exists, and it will exist as long as American bases are positioned less than 500 kilometers from Iranian launchers, the standard engagement protocol is incompatible with the available flight window. What comes next? Strategic repositioning, response escalation, or negotiations that alter the force configuration in the region? is the open question that defines the American posture in the Gulf for the coming years. There is no clean answer, and the numbers we analyzed today are exactly why. If this level of geopolitical and strategic analysis is what you're looking for, no speculation, no political narrative, just verified data and what it actually means. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Every video here brings this exact same rigor. What happened in the Gulf between February and March 2026 will continue to shape upcoming developments. When the next development arrives, you'll want to understand it with the exact same precision as this one.